Good afternoon and welcome to today's session that Googly MSMEs will have to play safe by Mr. Vishal Shah. I am Prasanna, co-host of the event today. Let me introduce today's presenter, Mr. Vishal Shah, CEO and co-founder of Cinesoft Technologies. He is known as seasoned technology stalwart, an inventor of specific patented technologies, a writer, a serial entrepreneur, an investor, and most importantly, a go-to guy for MSMEs. This session is specially designed for enterprise owners and management team. In this webinar, Vishal Shah will discuss certain challenges that MSME owners must pay attention to. He will discuss some unexpected hurdles that Indian MSMEs owners will come across while claiming these global opportunities. We'll also explain how MSME owners can take on these challenges and scale such hurdles to make India world's manufacturing hub. If you have any questions while you watch this demonstration, kindly write in the question and answer tab in the bottom of your Zoom login. The panel will take up the question at the end of the session. Alternatively, in case you want to ask any question in the end of the session, you may please raise your hand. We shall activate your microphone to ask the question. Vishal sir, can you please take it ahead from here?
Good afternoon all, and thank you Prasanna for an introduction. Thank you Rajendra for playing the video on HOHO training. This is an initiative by United SME where we conduct free trainings every Wednesday and every Friday on very vocational kind of subjects and soft skills, as well as the skills of Excel, Microsoft Excel, and that has been very well attended by many of the teams from MSME sector. So coming to today's webinar topic that Googly MSMEs will have to play safe has kept everyone keep guessing, So I will still take some more time to tell you all about what this Googly is. So this webinar is our initiative as in United SME. And we have worked out, we have done some research, and with our interactions with many MSME owners, we come across many problems, challenges they face. And then we try to find the solution of such problems and challenges, and then come up with designing and developing such webinars. So today we are going to focus on a Googly. We all know what Googly is. When a leg spinner, shows that he is spinning the ball, and it would be delivered as a leg spinner, but it actually gets delivered as an off spinner. We call it Googly, and most of the times batsman is deceived by such Googly, and most of the times Googly is a wicket taking ball. So we hope that our MSMEs are not bowled out by such Googlies, and we are going to introduce what that Googly is all about. So I will start with this particular webinar with a note that this time it is not going to be a kind of one-sided webinar. Every slide I'm going to discuss certain things, and I'm going to put it across to all the group who have been attending it. And you can raise your hand, we will unmute, we will activate your microphone, and you can actually tell something about or contribute to the subject by your own experience or by your own knowledge. So this is how we are going to conduct this particular webinar. So let me start with the first thing first. Before we go to the next part, as usual, I would like to call Prasanna, just to launch the poll. We would like to understand the profile of the people who are attending this particular webinar. So please help us with this particular poll. I can adapt the next few slides accordingly. So as we see on the screen, around 50%, 20, 20, and 10% of the attendees are either MSME owner, entrepreneur, key management personnel with an MSME, or advisory professional to MSME. And 50% are categorizing themselves as other because these webinars are informed to many IT fraternity, or many in IT fraternity also. So they might be coming from IT fraternity. So now we will move to our next session, and in that particular next slide, I would like to highlight certain changes that have happened around us, and we call them as geopolitical, demographic, industrial developments. So we have listed few such geopolitical, demographic, or industrial developments which MSMEs must notice, which MSMEs must analyze, and which MSMEs must watch for. So in recent last 2-3 years, whatever has happened, with us, we have listed these events, some announcements, some initiatives. We have listed them, and we are just going to see what are these developments and how it is going to impact us before we actually unfold what Googly we are talking about. So the first development I would say is post-corona, Indian pharmaceutical and biotechnology companies have gained a lot of dominance in the world. Indian pharma and biotech companies are now regarded as very reputed organizations, very research-oriented organizations across the world. And that has happened after how India handled with COVID and how Indian companies came up with the vaccines. So that is one development which we think that MSMEs must notice, and that is going to have a big impact on all of us. Another development is Indian demographics. Recently, we were officially announced that largest population in the world. And that has come up with another data point where we have largest working age English speaking population. And that is working age English speaking population. So India, of course, is the largest populated country in the world. At the same time, it has largest workforce, employable workforce. So this is another data point we need to keep in mind. We are going to have a lot of brainstorming in this particular session. So I'm just putting these developments, and then we will see the impact of these developments. The third is continuously we have been facing, not we, world has been facing supply chain issues with China. And that has become a new normal in our international business. And that is something MSME owners or MSME top management teams, must continue to watch for. Another development I would like to list is recently in last 10 years, government's focus on infrastructure has multiplied like anything. And that has actually created a lot of opportunities in MSME sector. So that is a development which we think that it is something which has a lot of significance. Then another one is Taiwan uncertainties. Taiwan is struggling with its own problems with China. And Taiwan is a territory, is a country on which world depends for its chips and processor requirements. Most of the electronics, is dominated by China. Industry is dominated by Taiwan, of course. And these uncertainties are, touching us in our day-to-day life also. Like if you now book a vehicle, it takes a long delivery because maybe thanks to this Taiwan uncertainties. Then we have emerging chip revolution in India, especially with the announcement of Vedanta Group and Foxconn to manufacture chips in India. That is a phenomenal event, and we consider this as a development which will affect all of us. We will see how. Then Russia-Ukraine war, when it started, everybody was, excited. everybody was worried. Now it is like part of life. Every day we hear something about it. But yes, it has very serious and long-term bearing on how we do business with the world. Then one more thing is India is now third largest. India is a country allocating third largest defense budget, you know. So in the world, India is the largest spending country on defense, on its own defense, because of its neighborhood. But yes, India is going to and has been spending a lot on defense. So one more development, which is a mindset related development. Now the world is getting divided, you know, between democracies and pseudo democracies and autocracies. Now it is the parameter of division in the world. You know, earlier it was Christianity versus Islam, it was something else, it was white versus brown or black, whatever. But now it is emerging with these developments. A compounding effect of these developments is now the world is divided between democracies and pseudo democracies or autocracies. And one more development which we think it is going to affect the MSMEs the most is proposal by Government of India for personal data protection law. We have GDPR, famously known GDPR in Europe, similar data protection law in UK, in USA, in most of the developed countries. India did not have such a strong law, and now this law is being deliberated since last 3-4 years, and it is going to have an impact on how we do business. So these are the geopolitical, demographic, industrial developments, which we think that MSMEs must, analyze. They must keep watching them because it is going to affect their business in a long term. So what I suggest is, before we move to the next slide, which is going to talk about the impact of these developments, I request Prasanna to launch the poll, and I would also request the attendees, to share their inputs about these developments and how they perceive, they have been affected, or they think that this is something significant for their business. So in case you have anything to contribute, please raise your hand. We will activate your mic, and we will value your contribution to this entire discussion. So as we see on the screen, 86% of the respondents think that their business is affected post-corona developments. 29% are affected because of supply chain issues with China. 14% because of Taiwan uncertainties. 57% because of Russia-Ukraine war. That is significant. People are indifferent to foreign direct investment in manufacturing. Then increased spending on defense, it is 0%. I will have some surprises on this. And 14% on proposed personal data protection law. Okay. So very good inputs. Now we will see the impact of these developments, how we translate the findings of these developments into actual impact on the MSME sector, basically. So we will move to the next slide. So we will talk about geopolitical, demographic, industrial development impact of all these things. So the first impact is about FDI in manufacturing, 0% respondent told that, they are not really affected. But let me tell you, we are affected, and it is going to be a big opportunity for all of us. I'll tell you, many automobile companies, of course, were operating in India, but now there are many automobile companies, electric car companies internationally are actually investing in India through foreign direct investment, and they are setting up large manufacturing units, gigafactories. And just like what has happened in Pune, Manesar, where we automobile companies like Tata, Mahindra, Maruti, they developed thousands of industries, in MSME sector as their vendors. So the first impact is because of FDI in manufacturing. When these gigafactories and large manufacturing units are set up by foreign direct investments, it is going to give immense opportunities to MSME sector, because these companies will have their very strong and structured vendor development programs. Another point is government spending on infrastructure like metro, bullet train, smart cities, highway infrastructure. And because most of these projects have a lot of indigenous components, this is going to benefit the MSME. So government's focus on infrastructure is translated into metro, bullet trains, smart cities, highways, bridges, and that is going to basically have a lot of opportunities for MSMEs. And every budget we see the increase in this kind of spending. Now, this is very important. 0% of the respondent suggested that, they are affected by privatization of defense sector. In my opinion, what has happened to automobile industry in terms of auto ancillary industries, this is another round of that development. Privatization of defense sector. Government has been spending a lot of money on defense. It is not only buying it from the developed countries. It is actually making a lot of indigenized parts, and most of that indigenization is happening through private companies, and these private companies are supplying to defense sector, and these private companies, large companies, will depend on many MSMEs who are supplying to these private companies, further supplying to defense, DRDO and all these organizations. Then the impact is due to phenomenon of make for the world, make in India, Atmanirbhar India. That was more of an import substitution. This is make for the world, and that is really happening. Last week the headlines were about top Tesla team, visiting India. We already have Apple phone manufactured in India, so it is make for the world. We have seen many automobile companies who do not sell much in India, but they export a lot from India. So phenomenon of make for the world is going to give immense opportunities to the MSMEs, because ultimately they are going to be the vendors for these companies. Then we have potential of cheap dependent value added products. This is just uncharted, basically. This is just not imagined. So see, India is always dependent on other countries for its chip requirements, microchip requirements. And now with Foxconn and many others setting up, manufacturing of chip, it is going to make these microchips abundantly available in India. And manufacturing sector, which is growing, it is also towards deployment of smart manufacturing technologies, Industry 4.0, IoT. And when these chips are available in abundance, there would be small companies, startups, who will actually derive so many value addition on this chip as a commodity. So once the chip is commoditized in India, there would be many solutions, maybe directed to IoT, Industry 4.0, smart manufacturing, and that would create immense opportunities for MSMEs, So that is something which I think we should look at it as an impact. Then we have labor reforms, MSME schemes, and import substitution policies. A lot of incentives are given. There are labor reforms being consistently effected by government, and there are MSME schemes to make the capital available to Indian MSMEs. So that is going to have, these government policies are going to have impact on MSMEs positively. Then we have custodian of data with liability assumption. This is something which is very important for all of us to understand. As soon as the personal data protection law is in place, most of the MSMEs who handle private data of Indian citizens, will become the custodian of the data, and they will be liable to protect that particular data. I'll give you an example. Let's say you go and get yourself pathologically tested in a pathology lab. Your personal data is with them. Right now, there is no data, there is no law which is protecting you as a consumer for any data breach in that particular laboratory. And here, what we can do is, with this personal data protection law, these laboratories, of course, will become custodian of the data, and there will be liability associated with any kind of data breach. Similarly, let's say we have Demat accounts, we have accounts with Demat participants. We have everything, including our signature specimen. We have everything with them, and these are all MSMEs. And these people, MSMEs in DP, MSMEs in pathology labs, they also handle a lot of data of personal private data of Indian citizens. And again, they'll become the custodians, and that will make them. Similarly, let's say you have gone to a builder, and a builder has offered you home loan for your residence or commercial purpose, and then you have submitted a lot of data about your IT returns, about your Aadhaar card, about your personal details, bank statements. That particular company which is handling your loan application will become the custodian of your data. So many SMEs who operate in this space, who deal with customers or consumers' personal data, will assume a lot of liabilities. They will become the custodian of that particular data. So that is something very important to understand for all of us. Now, before we move to the next slide, I would like to request all of you to help us with your inputs, and Prasanna can launch the poll. So if you want to give any inputs to this, we would be happy to learn from your experience or your analysis. So you can please raise your hand, and we can activate your mic. So what we want to learn is which of the following has positive impact on your businesses. So 71% find government spending on infrastructure as a positive for their business. 29% Make for the World initiative, 14% labor reforms, 29% for MSME schemes, 14% for import substitution incentives, 57% for foreign direct investment in manufacturing. This is so contradictory. In last poll, 0% thought that it would affect, but yeah, that's how things are unfolded. 29% privatization of defense sector, and 43% emergence of Industry 4.0, IoT, and smart manufacturing. That's great. So now we will move to the next slide. So what are the opportunities for MSMEs following this entire analysis? Let us understand. So the first opportunity is to participate in vendor development programs by MSMEs and very large enterprises, very large enterprises. So this is something is a very, very proven method. It is a proven strategy, I would say, very proven strategy. And that is something which is very, very known to all of us, you know. Another is basically exports to Western world, have your own high quality standard products, and you can very well um, on foreign exchange, and that will be a great opportunity. Then indigenous product for import substitution. You can strategize your business to take care of this kind of objectives also, and you have ready market for that. Now, what is the wish list in order to achieve either of these strategic perspective, vendor development or exports or import substitution? The wish list is, of course, you need capital, you need infrastructure, you need skilled manpower, and you need technology. And what are the means you have basically? So they are basically empanelment. So you get empaneled with this vendor development programs. You have your quality standards, you have quality team, you have ISO certifications, and that's how you can rely. You can sound reliable to these large customers, and by supplying, high quality products, you can establish your brand as a dependable brand, so this is something which are the opportunities for MSMEs, what kind of wish list they have and what means, by what means they can actually achieve empanelment by quality and by dependability. So this is something which is a very short explanation on what kind of opportunities MSMEs can look at as a fallout of a lot of developments we have discovered, and impact of that development analysis. So this is something which is defining the opportunities for MSMEs. So before we move to the next slide, I'm going to now unveil the Googly in the next slide. So before we do so, let us launch a poll, Prasanna, and let us understand everyone's perspective. I again repeat, in case you have anything to contribute to this, please raise your hand. We will activate your mic. We will be happy to learn from your experience or knowledge. So what we see is which of the following is strategic fit for your business. Empanelment, 54% look at empanelment, 69% as exports, and 38% as indigenous products for import substitution. Yeah, this is very insightful. Now we will move to the next part. So now what is the Googly? So you can arrange everything. You can see, as an MSME owner, you have a lot of experience, qualification, connects, everything. So you can easily manage capital. You can easily manage technology. You can very well organize infrastructure. You can also have skilled manpower for so, and you can aim for empanelment, quality standards, and dependability. But now let me tell you what is a Googly here. Everyone who has tried this will agree with me. And that is what I'm talking about as a Googly. Every empanelment you participate in or anything you are dealing with some large customer or MSME, nowadays you are facing this, and that is basically audits and compliances. So as a SME vendor, whenever you want to get empaneled, or in case you already have a large customer, now these practice has started. They expect their vendors to go through certain audits. They expect their vendors to achieve certain compliances. And that is a googly. I'll tell you why it is a googly. You could manage capital, infrastructures, skilled power, manpower, technology, everything. But you also deserve that kind of business opportunity. But because of this audit and compliance, which is, of course, not financial or accounts audit, it is audit about cyber security, compliance about data protection, and all that digital. So basically, this is a googly. Most of the MSME owners find this a googly. They find this challenging. I'll give you an example. Now I'll share a screen on which I will show you an Excel file, which is shared to me by one of our customers. I'm going to share that Excel file. So just see this particular Excel file. There are so many questions, these are being asked to some company which is bidding to maybe a large enterprise like Adani or Reliance or maybe some foreign company. And as a bidder, of course, they are participating in tender, but this tender bid is incomplete if they do not go through these compliances. And if you look at the questions, they are Greek and Latin for MSME owners. Lot of questions. Just see, I'm just scrolling down. I'm not going to read this. And then a lot of parameter details, that is all there, So this is definitely a googly. 37 parameters and 37 questions. And of course, after that, there is a physical audit, there is a VAPT audit. I'll give you another example of a company which is very much involved in financial services in MSME. Again, lot of vulnerability descriptions, and they are supposed to be cleared and they are supposed to be dealt with and attended. So I'm just scrolling down, nothing to read about it. It is a lot of things. Anyway, if we read it, most of the times we don't understand it, and that is a big challenge. So why I call it as a googly, let me tell you. I call it as a googly because as an MSME business, we know our product, our technology very well. We know how to deliver good quality goods on time, consistently. But when it comes to filling up this kind of complicated forms and compliances, we have to step back. We are always on the back foot. And that is what I call googly. So most of the people who are attending this webinar would have faced this at one point of time while they're bidding for a large enterprise or while they're dealing with a large enterprise which has now added these kind of mandatory compliances. And that is what I call googly. So now what is to be done? So they require certifications, they require practices, and they require tools. So certifications like ISO 9000 related certificates or 27,000 related certificates. Then practices, you need to make sure that you have certain practices and you have to really disclaim that, you have these practices, so certain possibilities are not to be considered. And you need some tools, so that you can comply to start with, and then continue in complying, you can continue to comply while you are doing business with the large enterprises. So certifications, practices, and tools are the one which can solve this problem. Now, I'll tell you one more problem. Most of the times what happens is, MSMEs set up, they do not have very highly qualified cybersecurity professionals on their role. They're very expensive people, and then that makes things more complicated. One, they do not understand all these things, and two, they do not know whom to go to, for this kind of things. At the same time, they are worried that they should not lose an opportunity because of something which they don't know, and they are not supposed to know, but they know something very well about their business, and that is not being considered in the empanelment fully. And because of such small compliance requirements, they might lose an opportunity. So that is something which I call as a googly. So before we move to the next part, I would like to request Prasanna to launch a poll in case any of you want to, share your experience about this kind of googly you have faced and how you resolved it. Please raise your hand. We'll unmute you. Yeah. So please participate in the poll. So 88% of the participants agree that empanelment requirements of cybersecurity compliance and IT audits are complex and difficult for an MSME, and 13% are not sure. Yeah, so this is definitely a googly. You know what you are doing, but you are expected to know something which you don't know, and it is not going to affect the core of your business. But yes, your relationship with the large customer will be defined by such compliances and empanelments. So now, what is needed? How you solve this basically? So let us see this. So getting compliance ready, how you get compliance ready. So that can be done by maybe implementing cyber security, which is external threat mitigation. There can be two types of threat. One is external. People can hack into your network and damage your data and other things. Another is basically data protection. You might require a lot of compliance related to data protection. You require insider threat mitigation also, which is about your employees. There should be something which is required by your employees, to be controlled. They might really protect your data, or they might really steal your data, either of that. So that is, I call insider threat mitigation. Then you have vulnerability handling. You might have vulnerabilities because of unupdated software, obsolete software, deprecated software. You might have vulnerabilities because of immature network designs, many things. Then access policy documentation and enforcement. As an MSME, when we grow with the flow, basically. So we never have very planned growth, and as it comes, we do. So many a times these policies are very outdated, and a lot of enforcement is also not done. So we'll see how you can do this. And then secured remote access, because nowadays people travel, people work from home, and many a times MSMEs require people to work when they are remote, and that also needs a security on remote access. So that is compliance. That is how you get compliance ready. And most of the times when you have this implemented, you can actually fill up that entire Excel file with very confidence, and you can really get the empanelment done or compliance done. So what are the tools to get this done? So you might have to invest in firewall, VPN. You might have to invest in backup solution, policy and practices for data leakage prevention. You might have to do it updated software. You need to make sure that your software are updated. Is there someone who is not on mute? Can you please check? Prasanna, I hear some voice from others actually.
No, sir. Nobody is unmute. I have just
Okay,
checked.
fine. So Active Directory and Domain Controller, please pardon the spelling mistake. It is Active Directory, not Director. Directory and Domain Controller for device hardening. You need that kind of tool for enforcing the policies. Then you have remote desktop or application virtualization for secured remote access. And for that purpose, you require IT talent. As an MSME, if given a choice whether you want to spend on an IT talent or a business development talent, you would always choose business development talent. Another problem is the IT talent may not be interested in working in MSME setup, and most of the times MSME setup or MSME organization becomes a stepping stone for an IT talent, so many a times these challenges are there. Availability of that IT talent is a challenge of an MSME. Affordability of an IT talent, they have fancy salaries, and there are people who give them because they have highly profitable businesses. But yes, availability and affordability and retention challenges. Most of the times MSMEs struggle on availability, affordability, and retention of IT talent, and they require IT talent to implement all those tools like firewall, backup solutions, software update, updated software, or keep the software updated, Active Directory, domain controller, device hardening, remote desktop, in order to achieve external threat mitigation, internal threat mitigation, data protection, vulnerability handling, access policy, documentation and enforcement, and secured remote access. So they need all these things. So the challenge is IT talent. And most of the times, because of unavailability of IT talent, most of the MSMEs are, in a fix when they want to get the opportunity to get empaneled. They might face certain limitations because of these reasons. So now we will see what it could be the solution and how you can do it very well. And before we do that, I request Prasanna to launch the poll, please. So we don't intend to get technical over here, but compliance for empanelment is definitely technical thing, but we are not going to discuss technicalities of it. The most of the times, what are the perceived challenges in compliance? If we see 14% perceive it as insider threat mitigation, 29 as external, 57% of MSMEs, availability and affordability of the professionals, 57% IT policy documentation and enforcement, and compliance and security with remote access application is a challenge of 29% of the people. Great, very insightful. Now we will go to our last part of the slide, and which is going to suggest the solution, which is going to train us how to face this particular googly very easily. So we are trained as, we have to see the grip of the bowler, and when he does something, at the last moment by spinning the ball in the other direction, we have to anticipate that it will be a googly. So this is something, now next slide is going to tell us how you can easily do it and how you can make sure that you can focus on your business instead of worrying about this kind of empanelment, which is just a small requirement, but it is a significant requirement. I'll tell you why it is very significant requirement. 6 months ago, we had a headline, where there is a company called Solar Group, had been attacked by some malware and ransomware, and there was a cyber attack, and that Solar Group was basically a supplier to DRDO. And through that, they suspected that, DRDO's network might have been attacked. So large enterprises, they would like to protect their interest, and whoever they are sharing their network with them, they want them to be equally prudent about it. So now we will see the solution part of it. So what could be the MSME oriented solution? How you can very easily do it? So firewall VPN, you need to have updated software. You need to have backup solutions, policies and practices. You need to have Active Directory. Again, pardon the spelling mistake here. Active Directory, domain controller, and device hardening. You need to have data leakage prevention. You need to have remote desktop and application virtualization. How you can achieve it without worrying about IT talent and whatever. So the first thing is IT in a box solutions. There are solutions available which are designed keeping MSMEs in mind, and they are the combination of everything: firewall, VPN, backup solution, policy, practice, everything you can do here, and you can actually check mark, all the compliances. And if you have invested in such an IT in a box, you can very well answer many of the questions asked in those compliance boxes very confidently. Another is hybrid email system. Many a times MSMEs do not subscribe to very standard email systems like Google or O365 because they are very expensive. Yesterday itself, Google has increased the prices again very significantly. Microsoft had done it 3-4 months ago. So that increases the cost, and that increases the recurring cost, annual cost. So MSMEs are conscious about it. They are sensitive to it. So we suggest that they should have hybrid email system where only for very important email accounts, they should use Google Workspace or O365 for the domain. And for the same domain, they can adopt hybrid email system by which they can really access other small email boxes for other people or other less important people, and that could be available at very cost effective. So average of such Google Workspace and O365 email IDs cost, and those less expensive email IDs cost would average out, and it will save 50 to 70%, and that will not compromise on the security and compliances. And we always suggest MSME should purchase refurbished hardware with license OS. Many times because of the piracy, MSMEs do not get through this kind of compliances. And when they look at the cost of fresh new hardware, and then it is loaded with operating system, it is because of that very expensive. And many times that's the reason they're tempted to take the hardware and use pirated software. You can very well save the cost by by procuring refurbished hardware, which are preloaded with licensed operating system, and that will solve your problem of how IT in a box can suffice for a firewall, backup, policy, data leakage, Active Directory, application virtualization, whatever. So let me tell you this thesis, 30% of the features. As an MSME, you do not need 100% of the features. I'll tell you firewall. Now, firewall has 100 features, but you require only 10 features to comply. You require only 10 features because your scale of usage is not very large, So we understand that 30% of the features will suffice for 100% of the requirements. And that's how IT in a box solution are most suitable solutions for MSMEs. They are cost effective. They are simpler because they are less feature loaded. So it can be managed by any less qualified IT person, and it makes them affordable. It is simple, and it is effective. It is effective because by deploying IT in a box, using hybrid email systems, and using genuine operating systems on your computer systems, you can very well comply and check mark everything and actually earn those opportunities which are otherwise, far from your reach because you cannot comply. So this is something about today's webinar. Before we end, I request Prasanna to launch the poll. And after that, if you have any questions, you want to give any inputs to whatever I have discussed, whatever I have presented, I would be happy to discuss with all of you. So as we see on the screen, 82% of the people find that IT in a box solution can be a shortcut to compliance. 27% shortcut to compliance as hybrid email system. Maybe they are just connecting the dots, and 27% for refurbished computer with genuine operating system. Just to tell you about IT in a box solution, Synersoft is a pioneer in IT in a box solution, which is meant for MSMEs, and that is branded as Black Box. Synersoft is also pioneer in hybrid email system where you can use the same domain, and for certain email IDs you can use O365 or Google services, and for rest of the domain you can use Black Box email system, which is equally secure but less expensive. And Synersoft supports United SMEs, which procures this computers, second-hand computers in bulk. It refurbishes them with new hard disk, RAM, and many things, and it retains its processor, motherboard, and operating system, and it makes them available to MSMEs. So these are the things which I would, propose to MSMEs that they can really get through these compliances through these three strategies: invest in IT in a box, go for hybrid email system, use refurbished hardware with license OS, and you can really do well in your compliances and don't lose an opportunity. So this is all about today's session. So, before we conclude the session, in case you have any questions, in case you want to give any inputs, how we can do better, I would be happy to hear you out. You can just raise your hand. We will activate your mic. Yeah, Prasanna, by the time we wait for their inputs, just check if anybody raises the hand. You can please unmute them.
Sure, sir.
So we have 3-4 minutes to further discuss. So I think we conclude this session today, and thank you very much for paying attention to these slides. I hope it was useful. And Prasanna, you can please conclude the session.
Thank you, sir, for such an insightful and knowledgeable session. This session leaves us all with plenty of ideas, information, statics, and vision to reflect upon. On behalf of Synersoft team, I thank everyone for attending this session. Please fill the survey form, which you will get at the end of the session to give us your valuable feedback. Thanks again.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.